Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Cast Iron, a podcast all about metal. I'm your host, Lewis Clark, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend and co-host, Alan Williamson. Hello, Alan.
G'day. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. Very well. So, this is our first recording session in...
It's been since last March.
We last episode. Yeah, but we recorded that in like December.
Oh man!
Yeah,
oh,
I know,
wow.
It's mad. Long time no speak, hey. But yeah, so we're recording a couple of episodes back to back here, so you should hopefully have these in nice quick succession, which is good. We've been looking to sort of get that down in the calendar for a little while now. But yeah, so in this episode, we're taking a look at the sophomore effort from New York progressive hardcore outfit Every Time I Die. That's right, it's time for Hot Damn!
I'm actually quite disappointed that at no point in the album does anybody shout, "Hot damn!"
I don't think any of the actual song titles on this album are actually uttered in the song themselves. They're all sort of weird puns and just daft, sort of emo-looking long titles. But yeah, so Every Time I Die, they are, like I say, a progressive hardcore sort of band. They mix sort of metalcore into their sound as well, and they like a nice bluesy riff. And on the Wikipedia page, they are one of the genres they are described as are southern rock, and I don't know if I'd actually agree with that too much, to be honest with you. But I can. I can
totally.
Of
bands that this album reminded me of, so
yeah,
I don't entirely disagree with that.
Okay,
but I mean. So I don't know what way you want to tackle this because it's quite a short one.
It is indeed, 27 minutes long.
Yeah, it's in and out. That's quicker than my drive home.
Yeah.
So I think with this one we can probably talk about each of the songs, but we can get more into why that might be hard or why that might be easy. As we go through it.
So do you have any experience with Every Time I Die prior to this? Is this your first time listening to them?
No.
Right.
Absolutely none. And
fresh.
I did my usual, which is, let's go for a run and put this on and see how it goes. And that was a big mistake.
It is a bit all over the place tempo-wise, isn't it? Yes.
Because it's a bit all over the place, but also anything that doesn't have like quite a high-up riffy guitar mix or something you're not overly familiar with is just hard to hear when there's traffic going past.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Mistakes were made.
But yeah, so this is sort of a much more down-tuned, sort of a dirty, groovy record, I suppose.
I think it's definitely kind of slightly groovy, kind of swampy and sludgy.
Yeah.
And there's bits of thrash in here. There's just some tinges of like everything from ZZ Top to Mastodon coming in here, which I think does give it that southern rock feel at times.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, so I suppose it's a weird one in that, like, this is probably not the most traditionally metal-sounding record that we've done on the podcast for a while.
I look... Because I was listening to the first track the other day, and I thought, hold on, this is a punk album?
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
This is hardcore punk. Yeah. But I did check Wikipedia, and it does say metalcore.
Yeah,
so you're off the hook for this one.
There's definitely elements of metal permeating their sound, and I think... But traditionally, I'd say this is more of a hardcore record. And that's why I like it, because I do like me some hardcore. So yeah, my introduction to Every Time I Die came... do you remember Kerrang TV?
Yes.
So back in the day, like early 2000s...
Should I admit that? Kerrang TV and Scuzz.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. This is where my sort of experience with Every Time I Die comes from, is that... when I first sort of was getting into heavy music, early 2000s, going to gigs for the first time and stuff, Kerrang TV was obviously quite unique and a bit special because, a heavy music channel. Wow, that's incrible. I didn't really get to see...
Is there any place to get it unless you went to, like, MTV or VH1 really late at night?
That's it. And I was always fascinated by music videos at the time as well. I thought, like, music television was quite an interesting concept. You soon notice with Kerrang TV that there was a certain playlist that would get repeated over and over and over, and it would be like certain new metal bands. So you'd always get like a Korn song, a Slipknot song, System of a Down probably, And then you get some classic rock like Guns N' Roses and Metallica thrown in there as well. But it was always that same stuff on repeat every hour. And then Scuzz came along, and that was so another heavy music channel, and that was my preferred choice at the time because it was a lot more sort of new bands and just a little bit more variety. And I remember seeing the video to Ebolarama, which is off this album, on Scuzz back in the day, and just being like, I want everything to do with this band. Because that's a mad video. If you've never seen it, it's basically the band playing the song in a roller rink. So they're in the middle, and there's like a roller disco going on around them, but they're obviously playing hardcore punk and just absolutely going for it. And I always thought that was a nice bit of contrast there. I like a good bit of juxtaposition. But yeah, always struck a chord, that one. And yeah, Hot Damn was the first album I got into them. It's not obviously their first record. Their first album is called Last Night in Town, if I remember correctly. The only record I haven't heard, I've never particularly heard anybody sort of hype it up or anything like that, so I've never felt the need to go to it. But since I listened to Hot Damn, I've kind of followed them pretty closely, and I've got every release since then. They had a big breakthrough with follow-up Gutter Phenomenon, because that came out on Roadrunner Records, which are obviously famous for Slipknot and Nickelback, among other things.
Looks other articles of diametrically opposed qualities.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, they definitely give bands a bit of a push, old Roadrunner. So yeah, that.
And I think their latest one's on Epitaph.
They've been on Epitaph for quite a number of years now. So yeah, that's more their longer-standing label since.
Epitaph is the Bad Religion.
Absolutely, they are the punk label, pretty much. So,
it's Brett Gurowitz's. So I'm still not convinced that we should be covering this on a metal podcast, but it's probably our own fault for saying it was about metal rather than saying it was about heavy music, and we just gotta take us one on the chin.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, there's enough metal in here, I think, to justify it. So let's discuss, I guess. It's like you said, it's a short one. It's only 27 minutes long. Doesn't pull any punches, pretty much in and out. So yeah, things kick off with Romeo a Go-Go. Which is just a relentlessly fast hardcore song. There is a bit of a time change into a slower, groovier riff, and then it picks back up into a faster pace. A little bit of touch of a black metal sound in this, in that you get some nice sort of tremolo pick bits and a little bursts of blast beats, which I quite like. And then there's a very sort of metalcore-esque breakdown near the end of the song. So a very progressive track, and it's a nice encapsulation of what Every Time I Die are all about in the first song there. What did you think?
There's definitely a lot going on with these tracks. It's 27 minutes long. It's sonically dense.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
My notes were that it's like organized chaos. There's just enough structure to this.
Yeah.
Where it's not completely unhinged. But I listened to this a few times, and then we were driving home in the car today.
Yeah.
I said to Jess, right, you need to listen to this thing, see what you think of it, because I've been submerged in it. And she goes, "Why are they hitting everything at once?"
Love it.
and I was thinking, yeah, that's pretty fair. And it's definitely not easy listening.
No.
And I learned pretty quickly that actually whenever I think about liking metalcore, I quite like melodic metalcore.
Yeah.
and there's a big difference.
So it's interesting actually, because at this point in the band's career, they are, like you say, very abrasive, very chaotic. And I don't know how you felt about the vocalist Keith Buckley's vocals, but he's obviously mainly a screamer for most of this record, but he does sing.
I really struggled, and we can talk about it more when we go to the next song off Broadway.
Yeah.
But after I listened to this, I gave Gutter Phenomenon a crack, and this is probably, I'm probably losing my cred here, but I like that sound a bit better.
Yeah.
I like that it was a lot. I like the clean singing a bit better. Obviously, it doesn't have that raw edge to it.
No, absolutely.
I find the screaming pretty hard to get into.
Right, that's fine. That's fair.
I think challenging
at this point in Keith Buckley's career as well. I think his singing is it hasn't been trained at this point. He is very much kind of self-taught, and his singing is kind of like off-key crooning a bit. It's very weird. It's not something
it sounds
I
like
would
he's
recommend.
Had a few, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's certainly unique, let's put it that way. But from, like you say, gut phenomenon, I think he actually does see a vocal coach and actually improves greatly. Some of the more recent records in particular, they are straight sung songs, and he's got a really nice voice actually. And also he's in a bit of a weird supergroup as well with what's his face from Anthrax, Scott Ian, called The Damned Things. And
Scott Ian, 2 first names.
There you go. So The Damned Things released one album back in 2010 called Ironiclast. He loves the weird joining of words into another phrase. That seems to be a very sort of Keith Buckley thing. But that's obviously predominantly sung as well, more of a heavy metal hard rock kind of thing. So you get a bit of an idea of how well Keith Buckley can sing. But at this point in his career, very early on, a little bit self-taught, and I wouldn't say that his singing was the greatest, let's put it that way. It can be a bit of a barrier, I think, with this album in particular.
I mean, I think, going back to Jess's car comment about hitting everything at once, it is like it's a big, dense sonic wall that hits you.
Yeah.
And it's probably just as well as his 27 minutes, because I think if it was any longer, I'd be starting to struggle by the end of it.
Yeah, you'd be absolutely exhausted.
I didn't enjoy parts of it, but in terms of albums we've listened to, it's probably the most challenging thing since Sixth.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
last time I made comments about Sixth, the band found out about it on Twitter. So,
and they follow us
everything
now.
Everything we listen to is totally awesome, and I have no criticism whatsoever at the end.
I love you.
So
Sixth.
thanks for listening. You can catch us on Twitter.
No, it's all good. But yeah, no, it's it.
But that one I got into, and with a lot of these albums, it just takes me a couple of listens to appreciate what's going on. But it's not something you put on for a spin in a road trip and nod your heads to.
No, absolutely. Kind of I think any good record deserves a couple of listens before you can make an opinion of it. To be honest with you, I'd never base an opinion on anything off the first go, just because like heavy music in general is quite challenging. It's very difficult if you come from a background where you wouldn't. More traditional song structures and pop music and things like that. To go into something like this is quite demanding. I think you do really need to give it some, a bit of attention and things. I remember, we've spoken about it before. Like one of the first heavy albums I ever got into was Iowa by Slipknot, and I remember that being just so challenging because it's just like, how do I even process what's going on here? It's so dense,
or even like whenever we did the Jester race before, and unless you know what you're listening for in those albums, you go, what the hell is this shit?
Yeah, that's it.
Until you understand where the vocals fit into the mix and what they're trying to do and what you're listening for and what you're not listening to. And as you say, your ear is attuned to pop music and stuff. Like we're both Michael Jackson fans, but it's a little bit different from the Jester race, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's just a case of adjusting your ears to different styles. That's all. And yeah, you absolutely need to give things a second chance before casting a judgment. Like I've always reviewed records the same way. I'd never review an album off the back of one listen. I think that would be unfair to the artists to just give it the once through and go, right, that's all I think about this.
Not even like a Disturbed album or something.
Oh,
like
well,
that.
if it was something I disliked, then absolutely. There's no reason to suffer through that again. God. I'd certainly want to listen.
I was listening to the new Disturbed album at the gym at the weekend, and there's at least 2 tracks that I actually quite like.
Yeah, I understand what people like about Disturbed, and I feel like an awful lot of it is a bit of a nostalgia act for a lot of people as well.
Oh, it's just pop. It's just pop music. That's okay. Every album's the same, but that's okay. Lots of people enjoy the taste of Diet Coke, and they're not expecting a different drink every time you open the can.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want anything other than an Offspring album from the Offspring. So yeah, it's a very similar sort of deal, isn't it? So.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
So yeah, let's move on then. We are on to Off-Broadway, which you previously just mentioned a little bit there. I'd say this was a bit of a groovier metalcore song in particular.
This is definitely more of what I would consider to be a metalcore riff.
go. Yeah. So yeah, you totally do get elements of metal with Every Time I Die, and this track in particular is probably one of the more metal sounding songs on the record. Nice big groove to it. You get that sort of, like I say, that sort of southern-esque sort of groove to their music every now and again, and this is certainly one of those songs that showcases it a little bit closer. Good track. Again, I feel like the first sort of 4 songs of this record are an absolute just blast through. You know, they really sort of grab your attention very quickly and show you what the band's are about. It gets a little bit more progressive, I think, around track 5, but we'll get to that obviously when we approach it. But yeah, cool track. Another barnstormer, one of my favourites. How about you?
I think, again, at this point, I was still struggling to get into the vocals.
Yeah.
And I was sort of, at this point, questioning what they added. But there is a bit of singing in this track, and I like it much more than the screaming. And I think I'd prefer it more clean more of the time. And I appreciate what you're saying, is it, you know, it's not exactly in tune all the time.
Yeah.
But I'd prefer somewhere more in the direction of like the New Black off Gutter Phenomenon.
Yeah.
Having said that, my head was starting to nod along, and they were breaking me down.
Yeah. I have a
breaking
feeling
me down through the breakdowns.
I have a feeling that the next track, I've Been Gone a Long Time, it might be one of your favourites then.
Why would you it is so wrong? And why you wear it is so right? It's so tight that I never felt better. So I'm going out to get her. And I don't care what's in the wheels. I feel to get there. Balances are minor setback.
Because I feel like this is the more traditionally rocky song on the record. It's got a nice big bluesy opening riff, and the structure.
It's got a really big hook.
Yeah. The structure is very much more traditional, you know, sort of rock song, more than the progressive, chaotic, hardcore leanings that we've had previously. I love this track. I think it's it becomes a bit of a staple with Every Time I Die. They'll have like lots of chaotic, hardcore stuff on any record, but there'll be certain select songs that'll be a little bit more traditionally rock in structure and just a lot more memorable and very catchy and nice grooves and licks, and like you say, and this is totally the one on this record, I think. It's a real catchy little number.
This one was a breath of fresh air for me, and I thought it was just a great track for bouncing about like an idiot at a gig.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing they'd play in the encore, and the whole thing would just kick off.
Absolutely,
and it is a bit like ZZ Top goes hardcore.
I get it.
It's got that kind of clangy, almost steel guitar sound. The bridge and chorus are really bendy.
Yeah.
And at some points, it's got a good sludge metal feel to it. So I really enjoyed this one. And I was kind of relieved, because I thought, I don't know if I can go through 10 tracks of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's going to be like, it all sounds the same. It all sounds bad. But I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, no, it's a real barnstormer. A great track. I really enjoyed this one, and a nice shift in tone. Like, I mean, it doesn't like lose its pace at any point. That if you think about the album in a whole, like, I think this is just a nice little diversion. That it's like, you know, it's not a slow track by any means. It's still very much in keeping with their sound. It's just stylistically a little bit different, a little bit catchier, and a nice little showcase piece for their songwriting, I think. So moving on to track 4, we have Godspeed Us to Sea.
Turns out I've never ever thought it all. I've been talking in my sleep, reciting teleprompted anthems. We'll bury it extra tight.
Another metal-y sounding song, I think, this one. A big groovy metalcore opening. And the bass drops, I think, are very sort of hate-breedy. That sort of doom, as it like, it's just, I love that sort of thing. It's very much like, here's the bit where you mosh.
This sounds like, to me, this is like Mastodon, the Lost Sessions.
Oh, I love
this could have
this
been
song.
This could have been a lost track off off Leviathan. And I mean, one of the things with this song is I really like this one, and I think there's a lot going on, and I get that the whole thing's fast and furious, but I think this could have used a bit more time on the stage.
Yeah. No, I get it.
There's some ideas like the final riff.
Yeah.
That I could have gone another 30 seconds of that to see where they wanted to go.
Yeah.
And while it's going, it really moves, but it almost feels like it's cut off too short.
That's a fair criticism. That's a fair criticism. I think this one has a lot of like really memorable riffs in it. In particular, lots of my personal favourite moments on this album in particular can be encapsulated quite well in this song in particular, because there's just so many big chunky grooves to it, and it's just like, I love that riff. This is a nice section. It's just like, I get where you're coming from in that it feels a little bit stunted, perhaps, just because there's a lot of nice ideas there that probably could have milked them a little bit. But
you need enough time to get it hooked into your ears, and that you need enough time to hear the riff a few times so you can get into a groove with it before it moves on to the next bit. And sometimes I feel this moves on so quick and there's so many ideas that I've almost not got time to enjoy it. And then when you come back to it and I'm listening and again, like, do I remember this track? Which one's this? And it's just as well I take notes.
But, absolutely.
That might be part of the inaccessibility for me.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think as well, like, the way you're approaching it sounds like you're coming at it as a metal fan, whereas the way I'm approaching it is perhaps coming in it as more of a punk fan, in that I kind of like that sort of like in and out, get all your ideas on the paper and just like just go for it as quick as possible and just not fuck about sort of thing. I enjoy the speed and the sort of truncated elements of like punk music in particular, and I really enjoy the fact that these are short songs, nice quick burst of just aggression, and hey, we're on to the next thing sort of thing. I like that a lot.
All you need to know is that you are a big hardcore punk fan, whereas I am a punk rock fan.
Yeah, that's fair.
And my favorite band is Bad Religion.
Yep.
Like over and above any metal band, they're absolutely my favorite. And I like bands like Bad Religion and Pennywise, and some of the more skate punky stuff like Offspring and Millencolin and those kind of things. So that's how I got into music, I guess. At the same time, you were watching the video for Bolorama on Kerrang TV. I was just playing a lot of Crazy Taxi and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Hey, I was doing the same thing. Don't you worry about that, mate. Don't you worry about that. But maybe we were taking different things from those soundtracks. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
That's a fair point. But I would like to point out that this is meant to be a metal podcast. Not that, but that's why it's good. That's why we come to it with different opinions and things, because
Absolutely.
we will have a better opinion for the two of us. And it's not to say that I don't like any of this. So it wasn't like I didn't enjoy it or find it repulsive. It wasn't making my skin crawl. It's just very different to the kind of things I normally enjoy. It's and I'm totally comfortable with getting out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the reason why I want to do it this way. So absolutely.
Yeah, but this definitely took me out of there.
Yeah, no, completely. And I mean, with the next episode in particular, it's a band that I am unfamiliar with as well. So,
for your sins,
for my sins, absolutely. So that's why I wanted to do this with you, fella. It's always a case of it's two differing opinions approaching the same piece of work, and I think that makes a much more interesting sequence of opinions than just your standard. We both like heavy music. Here we go.
Two white guys talking about heavy music. They get old quickly, especially because I've grown a beard recently.
Okay.
It's probably not coming across on the audio feed. And I'm not gonna ruffle the microphone. We like to be different. This album's different. That's okay. It's okay to be different.
But
What's next? Some absolute madness.
Yeah, absolutely. She's my Rushmore, which is heavier on the metal spectrum, I think. Very dissonant and very chaotic, this track. But I think maybe at a detriment. I think this is one of the songs I'd probably skip over. It's not as memorable because of its dissonance, I think. There's not as many hooks or riffs or grooves. It's very much a sort of hardcore attack on the old senses there.
Yep, it definitely puts the core in metalcore. This one, I think.
Yeah. You get
it is the shortest track, right?
I think so. Yeah, you get a lot of the sort of weakness of Buckley's singing on display on this one as well. You know, he sounds a bit weedy and a bit off key, as we mentioned previously, because there's a little bit more singing on this track in particular.
Actually, the last line of this one stuck in my head. Was it the greatest lovers and murderer first? We can talk about the lyrics probably in the next track, Floater, but that line stuck in my brain, so that was the least interesting.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, it's not a particularly memorable one for me. It's a particularly bad track or anything like that. Like I say, it's very chaotic, very intense, but I just find the lack of melody a little bit affecting on this one. It feels like it's missing something for me. I want more riffs. I want more grooves.
Come into the light. God, you're speaking my language now.
So yeah, we then move into Floater.
Too long, I'm sorry when I'm gone. I've got a bad reputation to think about. I've been dirty, I've been wrong. Maybe something I'll find that I've washed up. I'm standing out to clear my head. I'm breathing in to fill my lungs. We're all dead.
Again, quite dissonant, quite atonal, I guess. Very similar in concept to the previous one. I feel that there's a general lack of riffs in favour of being quite wild and unpredictable. But it does move into a nice metalcore-esque breakdown at the end, which certainly gives you a nice stompy, here's a mosh moment for you, which I do enjoy. So yeah, a tad better than She's My Rushmore, but still very much that sort of dissonant style that I'm... it's a bit of a mid-album slump for me, I think, at this point.
I mean, I think there's a really good riff half buried under the screaming in this one.
Yeah.
And it pops up during the chorus to say hello, much like a floater.
Hey.
But at this point, I was like, what's this guy singing about? So I was getting a little inline iTunes lyrics search, and it's like, Christ, the lyrics in this album are so bleak. And I think what's interesting about the genre is that, unlike most music, it doesn't need to rhyme or even particularly harmonize, and it's just kind of dark screamed poetry.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I could imagine this, scrawled in a 16-year-old's emo notebook.
Yeah.
But it's still a pretty self-aware teenager, and there's a bit of a wry humor to this. Like it's all quite knowing and tongue in cheek. So, and I think that carries it through in something that was a bit more po-faced and self-serious wouldn't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think as well, as with any artist, Keith's lyricism and vocals have really improved on later work. He's a little bit more... He maintains a lot of that, like you say, dry wit and a bit of tongue-in-cheek sort of lyricism in his work. You always get a bit of humour in there, but yeah, like you say, he is quite bleak and very dark in his lyricism, but an interesting vocalist. Let's put it that way.
It's interesting that you think it's improved, because I'm not an expert by any means, but I had a look at some of the sort of album reviews in places like Sputnik Music to see what the consensus was about what was really good and what was really bad. And one of the things that people had said as they moved with Gutter Phenomenon onto Roadrunner, that people, not necessarily a sellout phase, but people felt like obviously Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance appeared in that, which and he guessed in one of the tracks, which turned a few people off. I don't really know. I've nothing against the guy. But,
no, absolutely.
I think a lot of people felt that his lyrics have got a bit less interesting and a bit more kind of cliched over time.
No, that's fair.
So it's interesting that you'd say they've matured, and maybe part of that is bringing more of a songwriting craft into it. Which,
I just feel like
as you smooth off the rough edges, the fans who like the chaotic days might be a bit more turned off. But you've been there a while, so it's interesting to hear.
I just think, fine. I think they genuinely have improved as songwriters. I don't think there's anything wrong with being more memorable and catchy as things move on. I think that shows honing your craft almost, basically. It's being more memorable, I think, is quite important for music. There's nothing wrong with being interesting and memorable, but I just think if you're going to put forward well-crafted music. There's something that should hook you in, and a good riff or a good groove would absolutely do that.
I mean, given that is pretty much what I said 2 songs ago about wanting more grooves and wanting the riffs to last longer. I wholeheartedly agree. And I dipped into what's their latest album?
Low Teens is their latest album.
Low Teens. Yeah, I listened to the first couple of tracks off that, and I thought it was definitely a bit easier to swallow than this one.
Yeah. No,
you always pick the hard ones.
So, moving on from Floater, we have In the Event That Everything Should Go Terribly Wrong. Which is a very emo-sounding title, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
I'd say this is more of an interlude more than anything else. It's a slow sort of meandering jam almost, with like no vocals.
Yeah, it's kind of a bit
Keith himself.
bit doomy.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was actually, I can kind of take or leave the slow mid-album tracks, but this one I thought was pretty welcome break from the proceedings. It kind of eases off the gas a bit, but it's not like a cheesy ballad. It doesn't slow things down.
Some
too
nice
much.
texture to it as well. It's got like this sort of haunting, reverby female vocal going on. Nobody from the actual band; it's a guest piece, but it just cuts things up a little bit. Gives you a bit of a break because it's about to attack you with the song I previously mentioned as being the first I ever heard, and that is Ebolarama.
This is a rock and roll takeover. Living each day without it in time. No mercy, fucks, no one's blood. Oh, you should have been there by my side. This is passion. This is red-handed to know. I have no lover. That she hasn't the prettiest eyes. Let's go on to it.
So how do you feel about Ebolarama? I've already spoken about it a little bit.
I liked it. I thought it was pretty thrashy.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because, thrash bands like Metallica and Slayer were heavily influenced by hardcore music, and Metallica's done like Damage Inc., where it's basically lots of like hardcore punk covers.
Yeah.
And I think Slayer might have done an album in that vein as well.
Yes, they did. Undisputed Attitude. Yeah.
I really like the drumming in this track. There's just fills all over the place. There seems to be an awful lot going on in 3 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's such a wild, progressive, crazy monster of a track. Loads of riffs I really enjoy on this one. Just a big hardcore beast for most of it. But again, we get that lovely sort of like metalcore. Chug, 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 wah, wah, like sort of, it's so like nostalgic. That sound to me, like that is such a metalcore sounding riff. I love hearing it. It really reminds me of like late 90s, early 2000s metalcore, and it's a great track. It's very nostalgic for me. This song in particular.
Well, I'm glad you like it. I like it too.
Good
no, I think
stuff.
I can see how this one hooked you in.
Yeah.
I think if Off Broadway had been the track you'd heard in Kerrang TV that fateful night, that the course of your musical journey might have gone very differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, even if you came into it via maybe I've Been Gone a Long Time, I think that's quite unrepresentative of the rest of the record. Let's put it that way. So yeah, you could. It's interesting how much this runs the gamut of styles almost. But in such a
I don't know if there is a track that's truly representative of this. I mean, it probably is one of the stranger ones like Floater or Romeo a Go-Go, because it's such a diverse album. You've got hooky. You could definitely do an EP of all the hooky, sludgy Macedonian tracks.
Yeah, totally.
And then you could do an EP of all the really weird, hardcore. Just the downright strange stuff like She's My Rushmore and Floater, and I think the two would probably stand alone as two different continents of music.
Yeah, no, completely. I don't know. Like for me, I feel like it'd probably be this Ebolarama or maybe Godspeed Us to See being like a very good example of what sort of encapsulates their sound. It's that sort of chaotic hardcore, but also with that like groovy metalcore riff going on somewhere.
Underpinning it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we then move on to the final two tracks. We've got Hit of the Search Party, which again is another sort of chaotic, dissonant, hardcore rager, I suppose. Riffs aren't as memorable as I've already mentioned with a lot of the other dissonant tracks on this. It feels like they just sort of take a bit of a back seat to just being crazy and chaotic and a bit out there.
Yeah, being loud and aggressive.
Yeah, which is
this one
fine, I guess.
That's okay if you like that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
I think definitely the guitars are quite. It's quite a high, clangy riffiness to it, which is very distant compared to the more.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's more.
Lots of that. Yeah, totally.
I think with this one, it's interesting because I made earlier comments about how it's all kind of poetic and strange, and it doesn't need to rhyme. But in this song, there is a rhyme, which is we'll skin you alive, we'll poke out your eye. Like, that kind of rhymes, doesn't it?
Oh, that's very Slipknot, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it is.
I do love angry young men writing bad poetry. Eh? Something about it.
And that's part of this is that it's prototypical music for prototypical people.
Absolutely,
and it's it's okay that it's a bit disjointed and weird because the band were still finding themselves.
Yeah.
You at the time were trying to find what you were into as well.
Absolutely.
So it's totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think definitely not a standout track from the album for me anyway.
And sadly, I think the last track, Pornography, kind of suffers from a similar sort of thing for me.
One more time for the cause, and I promise we'll behave like perfect creatures.
Lots of weird dissonant guitar work on this one as well, and Buckley's sort of weird off-kilter singing comes back in full display as well, which it's probably a bit of a sticking point in this album in particular. I much prefer his singing later on, and I don't think he's honed his craft just yet on this one. So you get songs like this where he just sounds a bit sort of drunken almost.
So with their first album, do you find that the singing is much the same or worse?
Like I say, I haven't.
There's a notable progression.
I haven't heard the first album in particular. This is kind of my entry point to them. So I feel like
okay. So you never went back and listened.
No,
to
never
it?
gone back to it, just because I've never heard anybody sort of like stand for it. The first album's a great one. You don't really hear that much from the fan community, to be honest with you. It's very much Hot Damn's kind of the starting point, I think, for a lot of people. And
did you just use the word stan as a verb?
I did, yes. I'm sorry about that.
I'm not sure if I'm okay with this. I'm not sure I'm okay with this. We'll see. Don't do it again.
How dare you? How dare you? I'm sorry.
We'll have no 2010s slang on this podcast. All our pop culture references begin in the late 80s and the end in the mid 90s. We've talked about this before.
Yeah, that's fair. It will date this horribly if I keep doing that. So yeah.
Well, no more than all my Simpsons jokes and ZZ Top references and stuff.
Oh, we are definitely children of a generation, eh?
I think this one you've got another fairly twangly southern rock riff.
Yeah.
Quite Macedonian. A bit of what I thought was a bit of a skate punk breakdown in the middle.
Yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, totally.
And towards the end, you've got these big fat riffs carrying it off. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think it was entirely unpleasant. I think by this point I just kind of tuned out or grown to tolerate the vocals.
Yeah. And for me as well, like, even when I'm criticizing these sort of, like I say, the sort of atonal, sort of dissonant tracks, I don't dislike them by any means. I enjoy the style. I enjoy this type of music. And what with it being so short, it's very difficult for you to sort of, like, have a moment where it's like, oh, really didn't like that because it's over so quick. You just move on to something that's probably going to be more to your
Oh, well.
taste.
That's fine. Yeah.
So it's fine. So yeah, absolutely. But yes, it was really, really nice to revisit this. I haven't listened to it for a little while, and I found myself just sort of like having a bit of a bedroom mosh for half an hour on my own there, and really, really enjoyed it myself. Really enjoy coming back to this one a lot. How about yourself?
Well, I wouldn't say that I stand for it. I think my first listen through of this was a disaster, and I thought, oh God, how am I even going to talk about this for 5 minutes? Because it just sounded like a big hot mess.
Yeah,
and that was partly my fault for listening to it on a run and not being able to take notes on my phone. As I dipped into it over the past couple of days, I think I really liked bits of it. I really liked some of the things in it. The riffs and the sludgy, groovy bits I could really get into. The vocals left me pretty cold. But I think it's part of where it came in their career, and it's not. It wouldn't preclude me from listening to other stuff, and I'd definitely be keen to listen to some of the later albums just to give them a crack as well.
Okay.
So it was interesting.
Yeah, totally. So let's have a crack at favourite tracks then. I'm going to guess yours might be "I've Been Gone a Long Time."
I think that's about right. It'd either be that one or "Godspeed Us to Sea." But I think since the latter had left me wanting at the end, it's probably going to be "I've Been Gone a Long Time." So that was a good guess.
Oh, fair enough.
I mean, for you, I'll probably just guess a Bolorama because that seems like
I feel like
classic for you.
I feel like I may have letting on the nostalgia a little bit too heavily on Bolorama, because I wouldn't say it was my favourite song, but like you, I think "Godspeed Us to Sea" is probably my favourite song. So I don't know. I know you said "I've Been Gone a Long Time" probably your favourite, but you would have maybe picked that or "Godspeed Us to Sea." But I think that one totally does it for me, and I think it's mainly because it encapsulates them very well. Big groovy metalcore riff, lots of sort of chaotic hardcore leanings, but there's that lovely sort of Hatebreed-esque bass drop as well, which I really enjoy. It's just got pretty much what I want from Every Time I Die, all encapsulated in one lovely song. So yeah, Godspeed Us to Sea for me.
I've never actually listened to much Hatebreed, partly because I think the name sounds similar to Godsmack, even though they're totally different genres.
Might be one I have to recommend in the future then.
Oh, okay. Well, what albums? To someone who wanted to dive further into this, what kind of albums would you recommend?
So I've got a couple of picks. Straight off the bat, I always think of them whenever I think of Every Time I Die. It's Cancer Bats. And I went for their debut album, Birthing the Giant. Basically, Cancer Bats like to do that whole southern rock, groovy, sort of bluesy hardcore. And I think if you enjoyed that element of Every Time I Die, you're going to very much enjoy Cancer Bats. I think they basically highlight that as their kind of key musical sound, I guess. And Birthing the Giant is very much the first step in their career, and it's their first album obviously, but at the same time it's a little bit more chaotic. They don't go as groovy and sludgy as they do with the later records, but that first album in particular, very sort of southern rock inspired hardcore record, totally worth checking out if you haven't heard Cancer Bats before. And my second pick, I'm going to go for a bit of British hardcore punk. I'm going to go for The Ghost of 1,000 with New Hopes and New Demonstrations, also on Epitaph Records. A nice, again, groovy hardcore punk record, very much in keeping with the sort of I've Been Gone a Long Time sort of style of this album. Really, really catchy, really, really memorable. Great riffs. If you like catchy hardcore punk, I think Ghost of 1,000 are going to be for you. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. New Hopes and New Demonstrations was their last album and only their second, but very much the highlight of their career. Well worth checking out if you enjoyed the more melodic moments on Every Time I Die's Hot Damn.
I think that's the only podcast where someone's going to say, you're going to really enjoy Cancer Bats. Like, the Cancer Bats are loose. They're biting people. It's not going well. You're really not going to enjoy the Cancer Bats.
Hopefully I didn't pick anything that you also picked. So what would you recommend, Alan?
No. So I was trying to think about what could I go that was more towards my leaning. So it still had that kind of, I don't know, hardcore, post-hardcore feel to it.
Okay.
But also was more towards my leanings. Yep. So I picked I think is probably a post-hardcore classic, which is Thrice with Artist in the Ambulance.
Oh, so I've never listened to Thrice at all.
So Thrice are a bit weird.
Okay.
And but that one I think is just every track's a belter. Really good hardcore album. I was actually listening to it a couple of weeks ago. It's always in circulation for me. A lot of their later albums get a bit more increasingly spiritual and weird, but they're generally still pretty tight. But Artist in the Ambulance would be a good one. I think a good starting point for that.
Absolutely.
The other one of theirs that's good that I'm actually trying to desperately look up is The Illusion of Safety, which is the one before that. But Artist in the Ambulance is 2003, so it's actually the same year as Hot Damn.
I would imagine both bands would have found themselves on a festival lineup. To be honest with you, around this sort of time, they have that Vans Warped Tour kind of thing. Every Time I Die are always sort of on that sort of lineup.
Ozfest and things like that.
Totally.
So the other one I'd recommend, I can't remember if I recommended this before, was an album by Shadows Fall. Have I ever recommended a Shadows Fall?
Oh, yeah.
You just start writing these down.
Yeah, totally. God, I probably.
Probably. Okay, so the one I was going to recommend is called Fire from the Sky, which I think is a really good example of a great melodic metalcore album.
Okay, yep.
Pretty much everything Shadows Fall have done is really good, but that one is that's got some of the tastiest solos you'll ever hear in your life.
Lovely.
If I recommended that before, listen to Kill Switch.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think if you listen to this back to back with something like, obviously, Kill Switch is Alive or Just Breathing, or pretty much anything by Shadows Fall, who are contemporaries of them, that'll give you an idea of what the difference is between metalcore and melodic metalcore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or even when we covered Bullet for My Valentine's, The Poison, that's another melodic metalcore album, really, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. So some further listening for you all. But yes, brings us to the end of our episode on Every Time I Die's Hot Damn. Thank you very much for tuning in. We can be found on all the social medias. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cast Iron Show. You can find us on Twitter at Cast Iron Show. You can find us on Instagram, which we're really, really enjoying using, which is at Cast Iron Show as well. And obviously, if you want everything from the horse's mouth, so you can go to castironshow.co.uk and get all our back catalogue there. Please go and find us on iTunes, rate and recommend us. 5 stars, please. Only 5 stars, thank you. We would like to move up the charts.
We don't want your 3 stars. Nobody wants to be mediocre.
Absolutely.
Just one in feedback or 5 in praise. That's all we want.
Yep, all that stuff really helps us get the exposure that we need to reach more people, and that it would be very appreciated. So thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Cast Iron. I've been Lewis Clark, and he has been Alan Williamson. And join us next time for some thrash.
Oh, I don't spoil it because it'll come out 6 months from now. People will have been too excited.
But yes, thank you very much for tuning in, guys. See you next time.
Bye.